Welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. What we're going to be doing in today's episode is we are going to be doing a Q&A podcast. Now, I put out earlier in the week, earlier on the YouTube community feed, if you guys do, and if you are subscribed to the podcast, we sent out a Q&A thing saying, send us your questions. We're going to be doing a Q&A. So what we're going to do in today's podcast is the people that ask their questions on the YouTube comment section and in the community feed, we're going to be answering the questions. And after we're done with those 10 or so questions, if you guys have any questions that you want me to answer, could be Pistons related, could be just life related, could be basically anything really. We're just going to have a chill podcast and talk about it today, because there's really nothing going on in terms of just like basketball, because it is off season. It's August 4th. So we got another month or so of this until we get into the preseason talk. But we're going to get straight into it, you guys. So one of the first questions that was asked by Cat Productions, he wanted to know if I think a Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram trade could still be on the table. That is a great question, I do want to say, by Cat Productions. Now, with Lauri Markkanen, I think it's interesting because the Jazz have to make a decision, I believe, by August 6th, I believe that is the date, whether or not they want to extend him or trade him. I think there's a chance he does get traded, but I don't think it would be with the Pistons. I think if you look at a Lauri Markkanen trade, all the signs are kind of pointing towards Golden State right now. And Golden State does not want to give up, I believe, the rookie they drafted last year. I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now. But I don't think Lauri Markkanen would be on the table if you're Detroit. I do think it would be on the table for Golden State and teams that have a little bit more tradable assets, if you will. And I also think Utah doesn't particularly want anything that the Pistons currently have. Not to say that our assets that we have are bad. It's just you kind of look at Utah's team right now. They have a lot of guards. They have a lot of, front court depth. I don't really think that the Jazz would want anything that the Pistons could possibly offer them. Now, for the Brandon Ingram thing, I think Brandon Ingram, I don't think he gets traded this offseason. I could be wrong, though. He still has 1 year, $36 million left on his deal. I know there's been, talks about could the Pistons trade for him? Could, Cleveland trade for him? Utah. I don't think he gets moved. I think if he does get moved, it probably won't be Detroit. Again, are you really comfortable with possibly sending them Ivy or Duren? Because I think that's what it would take, possibly more. I don't really think the Pistons are in the situation currently to try to trade for a Lauri Markkanen or a Brandon Ingram right now, just because I think they just want to evaluate what they have, bringing in veterans like Tobias, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. I could be wrong, though. I'll admit if I'm wrong. I just do not foresee a Lauri Markkanen or a Brandon Ingram trade in the Pistons' future. But I'm sure you guys will probably disagree with me there. But that's just what I'm thinking. I really don't think we're gonna see any kind of Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram in Detroit trades over the next couple of weeks before the season does start. But that's just my opinion on it. Thanks for the question, though, Cat Productions. I do appreciate it. Let's get into the second question that was asked. So this comes from Michael Powell. See Michael Powell all the time on our live streams, all the time commenting on our videos. So shout out to Michael. He asked, do you see Holland getting regular rotation minutes, 16 to 20 minutes per game with the Pistons? Great question, Michael. I go back and forth with it. I know there are some people that think that, sending Ron Holland to the G League this offseason, or during the season, I should say, excuse me, is on the table. I really don't know. I do think he will get minutes. Now, 16 to 20 minutes per game, I don't think so. I think with Ron, they're going to have a more of a slow approach with him because I don't really think there's a situation where he doesn't have to do what Assar did last year, where Assar basically was playing, high 20s, high 30s. He was starting, being one of the team's better defenders last year. I think with Ron, the Pistons have the luxury of bringing him in slowly, giving him maybe, 10, 12 minutes, see how he does. And if he responds the way JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons coaching staff want, then we might see an uptick in minutes. 16 to 20 minutes a game. I would assume, Michael, that he's doing really well on both sides of the ball and he's impacting winning, and JB Bickerstaff trusts him as a rookie. I do think he will get some regular minutes in the rotation. It might be garbage time to start up the season. First couple of games until JB Bickerstaff feels like he can trust them and get more rotational minutes. But I don't really think he's going to have like the Assar Thompson role last year where Assar actually had to play because the Pistons didn't really have any defenders at the small forward position. Because if you remember, Bojan last year was hurt, didn't play until December. But I think Ron Holland will get minutes. They'll bring him in slowly and kind of develop him the correct way versus kind of just throwing him out in the fire. And if he makes mistakes and develops bad habits, so be it. But we'll get into the third question. So the third question we had was from Siren, and it had to do with Assar. I love these Assar questions, by the way, you guys. So Siren's question was, could Assar take on a backup point guard role? In the overtime elite, Assar played in the backcourt with his brother a lot. I would like to see him back to that style of play. Great question, Siren. To answer your first question, could Assar Thompson play the backup point guard role? I don't think so. And to answer your second question, or not so much a question, it was more of just like a comment about him playing backup point guard in overtime elite. Amen Thompson was more of the facilitator, more of the ball handler. And that's what he did in Houston last year. Amen Thompson was more of that point forward, if you will. I don't think there's a situation where Assar Thompson is going to be having backup point guard duties just because his handle isn't the tightest right now. I don't think that's a place or a position you want to play Assar Thompson as a backup guard. I do think there's a situation, though, where he could bring the ball up the court and maybe, pass it to Jaden Ivey or Cade or Tobias. I think there's situations where he may take the ball up the court, but I do not think there's a situation where you look at Assar Thompson saying, we need you to play backup point guard. Because I just don't really think his handle, as of right now, is ready to take on that responsibility. But appreciate the question. You did see that in OTE, if you guys did watch Assar and his brother Amen at the Overtime Elite League. So let's get into the fourth question, you guys. Appreciate everyone hopping in. Got 37 people in here right now, which I decided not to live stream on Twitter. We're live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. First time we've ever live streamed on Twitch. So kind of excited about that. People told me to get into Twitch, but hey, we're just trying it out, see how the people like it. So this comes from AK Ja7791 on YouTube. His question was, do you think the Pistons get a rebrand anytime soon? Rebrand, that is a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I like the red, white, and blue. I know some people think that the Pistons have one of the most boring, just, home jerseys in the league, which I get. I wouldn't mind if the Pistons touched them up a little bit. I wouldn't want like a complete rebrand. Like when the Pistons went from red, white, and blue to teal, I wouldn't want that. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't want like the Pistons just to mess with the logo because it's so historic and they've won 3 championships with it. I wouldn't mind though if they decided, hey, we want to just touch up the home and the association away jerseys a little bit. But I don't really think that the Pistons are going to mess with the home jerseys. But I do think they can get creative with the cities and the edition jerseys, which I know a lot of you guys have been really vocal about. The Pepsi Max jerseys, the black, red, and blues. I know a couple of years ago, the St. Cecilias were really popular. We have the teals that came back for a little bit. I think the Pistons have done a pretty good job with the city editions. You had the bad boy ones last year, which I really like, the black, orange, and gray, if you will. I just don't see them doing like a complete rebrand. Maybe they touch up the home and the away jerseys a little bit, but I don't think they just go full out and just like completely like relook the logo or rebrand the logo. But like, hey, that's just my opinion on it. But appreciate the question. So this is a question from Jason McLaren. So shout out to Jason for this one. And I like it. He's got two. He asked, do you feel Holland and Assar will get assigned to the G League? And the next question is, this one kind of goes with my other question. When do you think they trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Heat for Duncan Robinson to open up the rotation for the two? Okay, this is a very loaded question. I'll stick with the G League question first. Okay. So do I think Holland and Assar get assigned to the G League? I would be shocked if they both got assigned to the G League at the same time. I could see where maybe Holland does get some G League minutes just because there might not be rotational minutes right away, considering how JB wants to run his rotations. There could be a world where Ron Holland, gets maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe his first, 3 to 5 games to start the season, and he's not getting a whole lot of playing time. They might assign him to a cruise for a game or two during an off day, just to make sure he's staying fresh and he's getting reps and getting more playing time. I'd be absolutely shocked if Assar got assigned to the G League. I really would. I don't think there's any shot that Assar Thompson goes to the G League. I really don't. Your second question. You asked, when did they trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Heat? Okay, well, Tim Hardaway Jr. can't be traded for quite a bit for Duncan Robinson. Now, if you guys know me, I really like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, so I love this question by Jason. I think for the Heat to trade either Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero, one, they have to play like absolute like dog shit, or two, the Miami Heat just come out the gate just not playing good basketball, and I find that really hard to believe. And I find it kind of hard to believe that the Heat would want Tim Hardaway, because they're pretty set at two guard. If you kind of look at their roster, they need a backup point guard more than anything right now, because all they really have is Terry Rozier. But I don't think there's a situation where Tim Hardaway Jr. Gets traded for Duncan Robinson, unless the Pistons are throwing some future assets or a young player like Marcus Sasser, for example. But I don't think that's in the cards. And I really don't think both Ron Holland or Assar Thompson are going to be in the G League. I'd be really shocked if they both went at the same time. Ron Holland, maybe a game or two, but that's it. So the sixth question we have, what do you think it would take for the Pistons to be a play-in team? Great question. And I feel like a lot of us have had the play-in talks because it's offseason and there's not a whole lot to talk about, right? What it would take for the Pistons to make the play-in. I think if the Pistons want to make the play-in, and the goal should be to try to be a play-in team, you're going to have to come out the gate strong. You're going to have to start the season, in my opinion, at least, your first 10 games, a couple games over 500. And just have a very strong beginning of the season, because those games, February, March, April, you might not be the healthiest. So it's really important to start the season off strong, because we do know that the Pistons, for whatever reason, they have really bad luck with injuries. Probably over the last, I'd say, 7 to 8 years, they just have been a really injury-riddled team towards the second half of the season after All-Star break. So I think you have to start off the season really hot and win the games that you're supposed to win, and you should be good. Also, I think you're really going to have a huge leap in development with Jaylen Duren on the defensive end of the floor, a leap from Cade Cunningham, which I think Cade can take another leap. You're going to have a leap from Jaden Ivey, a leap from Assar Thompson. I think a lot of things would have to go right development-wise for you to win 30, maybe 40 games to try to compete for that play-in spot. I don't think it's impossible, but I do think that you're really going to have to come out the gate hot, win the games that you're supposed to, compete with the Bostons, the Miamis, the New Yorks. You're going to have to really put some good games together. But I don't think it's impossible. And I do think that should be the goal for the Pistons this season, is at least try to compete for the plan. I'm not asking them to go from 14 to 50 wins overnight. I know it's a process. Things take time. You got a brand new coach, new system, all that stuff. But I do think as Pistons fans, the play-in should at least be the goal for the season. At least try to compete. Try to play for a full 48 minutes, night in and night out. I think most of us would be happy. I know I would, at least, because last season was just felt like a bad dream, and I just couldn't get up. Like, last season was crazy. We're going to our next question, and this comes from Detroit sports fan since 2002. Shout out to you, man. I see you all the time in these live streams. See you commenting from time to time. And I love this question. If the Pistons were not an NBA team, what team would you support? Ooh, this is a good one. This is a really good one. If I was not a Piston fan, or your question, if the Pistons were not around, I've always liked the Denver Nuggets, and I can explain why. So when the Pistons didn't draft Carmelo Anthony, because I watched a lot of college basketball when I was younger, watched a lot of Syracuse because Syracuse was good and they won the national championship. So I watched the Denver Nuggets closely to see, what he did in Denver. And over the years, like, I started still supporting Denver. Like, one of my probably all-time favorite Nuggets, and it's probably not the most popular choice, is Ty Lawson. I just liked him as a point guard, but I would probably say Denver would be my choice. I've always liked the Denver Nuggets. Like, even watching them now, like, I love watching Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon and all those guys play. Like, they're definitely my league pass team. If I'm going to watch some good basketball and watch a team that, like, I support, and I was really happy when they did win an NBA championship. But Nuggets would probably be my team if the Pistons weren't around. Really like the question, though, man. Great question. And I'm sure some people, if you weren't a Pistons fan, like, say it in the chat. Like, what team would you support? I'd love to read the comments, you guys. Any chance of trading for Kyle Filipowski from Utah? And have they yet signed him? This comes from Jeremy Banks. So, Jeremy, great question. I don't think so. And I think the reason why they have not signed him is they're probably waiting to see what happens with the Laurie stuff. We talked about it in the top of the podcast. Possibly, could the Pistons trade for Laurie Markkinen? I don't think so. They have not yet signed Kyle Filipowski. I think they will. I don't, and plus you can't trade for rookies right now anyways. You have to wait a couple of months. But I think for Utah, they're really happy to get him where they got him. I know a lot of people had him projected first round. And if you guys kind of like Google his name and get to the girlfriend stuff, that's a whole nother rabbit hole I'm not going to get into. I'll let you guys get into that. But I mean, He's a good player. I know a lot of Pistons fans were saying, like, yo, if Filipowski's there at 38, the Pistons draft him. Obviously, Utah took him right away. I think Utah will sign him. They're just waiting to see what does happen with the Lauri Markkanen situation. I think we'll hear about it within the next 2 days or so, whether or not he signs that extension or whether or not Utah is going to possibly trade him, which wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors ponied up and gave Utah what they were asking for. Let's see. We do have another question. I'm kind of laughing at a comment that someone left. Oh, man, you guys are funny. Okay, this is the question. So I've talked about this before, but we'll talk about it again. Question is, do you really think Cade running a heliocentric offense will work long term? As far as I can tell, the offenses tend to struggle deep in the playoffs, and I think we need another scorer. To me, it's why I don't get why people want Ivy gone. We need someone else that can get threes, and he's shown he can get when he's going. Okay, so great question. I honestly think that when you talk about a heliocentric offense, the first person I think of automatically is Luka Doncic, and I think a lot of you guys do too. A heliocentric offense can work. In terms of Cade Cunningham, how it can work is you need to surround pieces around Cade that complement him, which how it translates to Luka Doncic in Dallas is Dallas understood that, hey, if we get role players around Luka, it can work that way. It could work in a sense where if we have another player next to Luka Doncic, it could help him. And that's how the heliocentric offense can work. Now, to your point, what happened was Dallas figured out we need to get another scorer, another ball handler, if you will. So they traded for Kyrie Irving. Now, I'm not comparing Jaden Ivey to Kyrie Irving. Nobody's going to. I think it's a crazy take if you do. But I think the big reason why people bring up Jaden Ivey and possibly why people want Ivy gone has nothing to do with the heliocentric offense. It has more to do with Jaden being inconsistent, and I will give Jaden a pass in terms of Jaden Ivey really has not had a consistent role in his 3 years in the NBA. He went from sharing a backcourt with Cade for 12 games to being the starting point guard under Dwayne Casey's last year to last season being a bench warmer basically for Killian Hayes for half the season. Then he's playing starter minutes, and then his minutes weren't consistent. And then this year he's playing for another coach in JB Bickerstaff. And JB Bickerstaff said on 97 won the ticket, he plans to stagger Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and use him that way. So I think the reason why people want Jaden Ivey gone is they don't see the consistency, but it is pretty hard to be consistent when you really don't have a defined role and you've played for, this is going to be his third head coach in 3 years. So it's probably really hard to be consistent and, just perfect your craft when you have so much movement in terms of head coaching changes, front office changes, stuff like that. But I think a heliocentric offense can work around Cade, but I think the main reason why a lot of people aren't as high on Jaden Ivey is they look at the inconsistent shooting at times. Like you said, when he's hot, but he had stretches this year where he just couldn't hit a shot. And that's to be expected when you're inconsistent. I also think hiring a shooting coach like Fred Vincent not only is going to help players like Cade Cunningham, it's going to help players like Jaden Ivey, Assar Thompson, Ron Holland as well. So I think we have to be a little bit more patient with these two in the backcourt. But I do think a heliocentric offense surrounding Cade Cunningham can work. You just have to get the right pieces. And Trajan Langton did a phenomenal job of addressing a need, and that was shooting. You get Beasley, you get Tobias Harris, and others to, help Cade spread the floor and have more floor spacing around him. But thanks for the question. Do appreciate it. Get to the next question. Who has the highest ceiling on the team? Ooh, this is a good one from Jim. Highest ceiling. Um, that is a good one. Highest ceiling. I want to say Jaylen Duren, but you know what? That's a good question. I think I'll switch my answer to Assar Thompson. I like JD, I do, but I think if Assar Thompson develops a jump shot, a mid range, and it's like league average from three, I think you got a guy that could possibly be a two-way star. I mean, you could throw Ron Holland in that same conversation too, but highest ceiling, I'd probably go with Assar Thompson, but I could see other people in the chat saying it could be Ron Holland, it could be JD, it could be other, players on this team, but I would probably go with Assar Thompson in terms of who has the highest ceiling on this team so far. So the last question, and then we'll get to all you guys that are watching live right now. We'll get to your questions and maybe wrap this up after an hour or so. So Johnny said, AM Hoops uploaded the video giving some love to former Piston Power journalist Jason Preston. Your thoughts? Shout out. So shout out to AM Hoops and shout out to Jason Preston. So for you guys that don't know, pistonpower.com, really good Detroit Pistons website. If you guys just want to read Detroit Pistons articles. Now, Jason Preston is actually an NBA player, and he used to write for Piston Powered. He used to blog for Piston Powered and write articles about him. I love that AM Hoops is giving him a shout out. Used to read Jason Preston's articles all the time when he was writing at Piston Powered when I was in high school. But Jason Preston, I believe, I want to say he got drafted by the Clippers. I don't know where he's at currently. He may have gotten traded or waived or whatever, but that's crazy, man. It's crazy that he was a blogger writing about the Detroit Pistons, and then he gets drafted in the NBA a few years ago. It's just kind of like a full circle moment, but that's really cool that AM Hoops is had talked about him in his YouTube video and kind of given him, just a shout out. But it's kind of crazy though, if you think about like some people that like write and then they got drafted, like that would be like really crazy. But we will get to some questions that you guys have answered or asked, I should say. Let's get into some of these questions. Just let me take a drink though, you guys. My mouth is drier than the Sahara Desert over here. Holy crap. Okay, let's get into it. So Tyronn Lewis. Shout out to Tyrone, my bad. Do the Pistons start Tim or Malik or put Jaden to run the second unit? Great question, Tyrone. I think this is the one question that I just don't know. But to answer your question, I put Malik Beasley in my starting five. I've seen other people. Shout out to Pistons Intellect, Jack Kelly. He put out he has Jaden Ivey in his starting five as a shooting guard. My thing is this: if the Pistons are not going to address a backup point guard, I think you can have Jaden Ivey off the bench, but you would have Jaden Ivey off the bench, but Jaden Ivey's probably going to play 26 to 30 minutes. There'll be opportunities for him to run the second unit, and there'll also be opportunities for him to play with Cade Cunningham. I think a guy like Malik Beasley throughout his career has been his starter, and he's a high volume 3-point specialist, shooting around 8 threes a game at a 40% clip last year for the Milwaukee Bucks, and he's kind of been a very good 3-point shooter throughout his career. 37, 38, 39% from three. That's why I had Malik Beasley in my starting five, but I could see a world where you do put Jaden Ivey as a starting two guard, or even Tim Hardaway Jr. for that matter. But personally, I don't know. I think it's the $1 million question. I really do. Just because there's no sound decision right now that we've gotten from anyone in the media that has broken a story, or we haven't heard from JB Bickerstaff since Summer League. But like I said, I could see Malik starting. I could see Jaden Ivey starting. I could see Tim Hardaway Jr. starting. I don't think The shooting guard position is just Jaden Ivey's. I think Jaden Ivey's going to have to go into training camp and earn that spot. Same with Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. Robert, why do I think J.I. comes off the bench to be a backup point guard? Again, the reason why I said that is he would be the sixth man off the bench. He would come off the bench as a backup. You can stagger Jaden Ivey with Cade Cunningham, having at least one of those guys on the court at all times, and Jaden Ivey can still run the second unit, and he can still play with Cade Cunningham. I think sometimes when people look at the backup point guard position or, a starting lineup conversation, or if you say starting lineup versus bench, some people automatically think, oh, Jaden Ivey, backup point guard, he's only going to be playing 10 to 15 minutes. No. I think Jaden Ivey probably gets anywhere from 26 to 32 minutes a game. I think there's a situation where, he could start or he could come off the bench. I think he's versatile in that way. JB did say he wants to stagger their minutes together, but I could see a world where maybe he's that sixth man off the bench. Maybe Jaden Ivey is your sixth man off the bench to run your second unit. Again, I don't think the shooting guard position right now is Jaden Ivey's off the bat. JB also said in a press conference that everyone is going to have to earn their spot. No spot is going to be given. So he's going to have to earn that in training camp. And we're going to have to see what it looks like in training camp and preseason and kind of give a better opinion then. It's August right now. I don't think preseason games are end of September, early October. So we got like another month of just basically speculating because we don't know. But just my opinion, I think you could see Jaden Ivey off the bench if they don't address that backup point guard need. They haven't yet, so we're going to have to wait and see. They still have $10 million in cap. I don't know what they're going to do with it, and they have an available open roster spot. But thanks for the questions, you guys. I do appreciate it. Who's our starting lineup? Now, we got into a little bit with the Jaden Ivey stuff. I think the three positions that are automatic given is Cade Cunningham at point guard, Tobias Harris at power forward, and Jaylen Duren center. I think small forward and shooting guard, again, I think Malik Beasley could be in the starting lineup. I know some people don't like the defense, but I would probably trade off the, high volume 3 percentage in the floor spacing versus a defense. Like, none of our two guards can really defend at a high level. I mean, if we're being honest. But like I said, if you guys want to put Jaden Ivey in there, I can understand it. You want to put Tim Hardaway in there at two guard, I can understand it. I'm not really going to get into a debate about it, but that's just what I have. And small forward, I could either see Simone Fontecchio or Assar Thompson being the small forward on this team and the starting lineup. Wouldn't surprise me if you want to put Fontecchio out there just for his floor spacing and his ability to take it to the basket, 3-point shooting, all that stuff. But I honestly think that you could see a lot of different combinations, but I will say shooting guard and small forward are the two positions that I have the most questions about because I don't think they're set in stone like point guard, power forward, and center are. Because I think all of us can agree Cade's probably your point guard, Jaylen Duren's probably your center, and Tobias Harris is probably your power forward, right? But that's just kind of like where I'm at in terms of the starting lineup. Again, like I feel like some people just want like all offense. They don't care about defense. Like I saw Cade, Jaden Ivey, Fontecchio, Harris, and Duren, which there's not one defender out there, but you're not really worried about playing defense and just worried about scoring a lot of points. I could see it and understand it. This comes from Adam Perry. Shout out to Adam. What kind of stats do you project for Cade this year? I'm thinking 26, 5, and 8 on 47, 37, and 88% shooting. Ooh, like it, Adam. I haven't really thought about what Cade's stat line may be. I like the 26. I would say I think he's around the 25 to 27 range this year for sure. I think he could take a step in scoring because that mid-range just looks cash. 5 rebounds, I could buy that. Anywhere from 4 to 6 rebounds for Cade. Now, the 8 assists tonight, I think this might be a hot take. I think Cade has the ability now because he has more floor spacers around him and the team's a little bit better. I think he could be anywhere from 9.5 to 10 assists tonight. If Tim Hardaway gets hot, if Malik Beasley, comes into his form of just being a high volume 3-point shooter, I could see Cade getting close to 9-10 assists tonight. 47 from the field, 37 from 3, and 88 from the free throw line. I like it, man. I like where your head's at, Adam. I think those are kind of we're kind of on the same wavelength in terms of like what Cade's stats could be, but would not surprise me if you see Cade, possibly close to that 10 assist mark because he has more perimeter spacing. I mean, if you look at last year, I think he averaged 22 and 7.5 assists with, Killian Hayes as his backcourt mate. Isaiah Livers played a lot. Bojan Bogdanovic, who was a really good knockdown shooter. Cade averaged 7.5 assists with no floor spacing, really, and veterans that were kind of on their last leg, if you will. So I think Cade has the ability to definitely get up to 10 assists this year, in my opinion, anyways. So Antonio Page, shout out to you, man. What about trading for Anthony Simons? So I saw this, I want to say this past week. And here's the thing. I think I've always told you guys, like, Portland's the one team that I can't figure out because they have like vets like Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton, who I guess they're trying to trade Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton. They're asking 2 firsts for Jeremy Grant. Good luck. And good luck trying to trade DeAndre Ayton after you gave him that big contract. But Anthony Simons is a good player. Here's the problem, though. Kind of falls in line with the Lauri Markkanen stuff. Would Portland want another guard? Probably not. They probably wouldn't want Jaden Ivey. They wouldn't want Marcus Sasser. I think if you're Detroit, Anthony Simons is a name, and he's a guy that you've seen. If you watch some Portland games or you just watch some highlights, he's a very good player. But at the end of the day, I don't really think Portland would really want anything that we currently have. Would they want Jaylen Duren? Probably not. They just drafted Donovan Clingan. Would they want Assar Thompson? I'm not sure. I don't really think the Pistons have the assets that Portland would probably want to try to trade at Anthony Simons. And Anthony Simons is a really good player. He's probably going to go for at least a starter and possibly some picks. I don't really think the Pistons have the assets, personally, in my opinion, to try to get at Anthony Simons, but I like him as a player. I think it would be a good fit next to Cade. I personally just don't think the Pistons have the assets to get him, which, hey, man, kind of sucks because he's a really good player. This comes from Sean Don Sport. Shout out. Who do you think makes the biggest jump in their offensive game this year? Ivy or Assar? Good one. That is a good one. That is a good one. Biggest offensive jump. I would say, I think with Ivy, I could see anywhere from 15 to possibly, 18 points a game. I think that's kind of like where he's at. I'm going to say Assar just because the floor was so low last year, like 9-10 points a game with him. I think if you're the Pistons and you hire Fred Vincent, which Trajan said he's in the gym every day with Fred, working on his jump shot, I think Assar would take a bigger offensive leap going into next season, in my opinion, just because the floor is so low with Assar that if he goes from 10 to 14, that would be a big jump. With Ivy, he averaged 15 points. If Ivy goes from like 15 to 20, I think a lot of us would get talking like, yeah, just give Ivy the extension right now. Just sign to a contract extension. But I'd probably go with Assar, in my opinion. So let's get to the next question. This comes from Cruza923. Shout out. Who do you think is the next current Piston to be traded this upcoming season? Or do you think no one on this team is getting traded at all? Okay, I do think there will be a trade. Don't know when. But the next Piston to get traded, that's a good question. If I had to guess right now, I would say Sasser, just because, not that I don't think he's a good player, because I think he's a great player. My thing with Sasser is I just don't see a pathway for him to get consistent minutes on this team. Now, I know the Pistons tried the experiment with, point guard in the summer league, right? Which I think a lot of us were like, he's more of a shooting guard, more of just a guy to give him the ball and he can score, kind of a bucket getter, if you will. I don't know where the minutes are going to come for him. Like, if they're going to use him as a point guard, sure. But shooting guard, like, you're going to be competing with Jaden Ivey, who's basically trying to get a contract extension from the Pistons. You have Tim Hardaway Jr., who's going to be a free agent. He's in a contract year as well. And you have Malik Beasley at the shooting guard position. I don't know where Sasser is going to play. I have a feeling he may get moved to a team that maybe there's more of a pathway for him to get more minutes. But I do think there's a world where the Pistons do keep him. But if I had to guess one player on this team, I think Marcus Sasser is kind of the odd man out in terms of playing time, because the shooting guard position right now is just really full and locked and loaded. If you want to use Marcus Sasser as a point guard, you think he's more of a long-term point guard in this league, you could probably try to talk me into that, but I don't know. I think in terms of just when you look at the team, I think Sasser probably makes the most sense. But I don't know, man. It's hard to guess. I do think there will be some trades though this season for sure. Rock Howard has a question. Thoughts on turnovers? I think we had just as much to do with our bigs losing streak last year, our poor shooting and defense, hoping the new roster and better shooters helps out with the turnovers. So I like this question, Rock. Shout out. I think the biggest reason we had so many turnovers last year was if you go back and watch a game when Cade was in the lane and it was clogged with Isaiah Stewart, Jaylen Duren, and there wasn't really a clear pathway for him to kick out the ball because the lane was so clogged, or Cade trying to get to the basket. I think with more spacing, you're going to see less turnovers from Cade and the team. But I do think Cade is going to have turnovers. I'm not going to say he's not going to turn the ball over. Usually guards that have a high usage rate like Cade, they're probably going to turn the ball over anywhere from 2 to 3 times a game. That's just to be expected. I mean, you look at Trae Young. Trae Young has the ball in his hands a lot, just like Cade Cunningham does. But that's to be expected. If Cade can lower his turnover, so like around 2.5 a game, to me, that's a win in itself. I know last year he had a lot of turnovers, and I think a lot of people were on his ass about it. And that's to be expected when you have the ball in your hand as much as Cade did, but you also have to take into consideration the lack of floor spacing that the Pistons did have, and not having Bojan for the first couple of months of the season was probably really crippling for Cade, because Cade looked for Bojan a lot when they did play. But I think having more floor spacing, to your question, Rock, will help lower the turnovers with this team. But I do still think it's going to be an issue just because this team is really young. But having vets like Tobias, Tim, and Malik should help cut them down a little bit. I don't think that we're going to be absolved from it, but we can't have like 20, 25 turnovers every night and expect to win the game. Because that's something that I remember watching. Like, we just had so many turnovers. It'd be like 15 to 20 a night, and we're trying to get back in the game. And it's just like, I guess that's to be expected with a young team. But I don't know. I hope they go down a little bit. This comes from Tiger Woods watching on Facebook. Shout out to him. I feel like everyone is sleeping on Klitman. Kid's gonna be a star. Yeah, Bobby is a good player. He's been posting a lot of workout videos. That 3-point shot looks so pure. It looks good. I think Bobby's gonna be a really nice player. Like a really nice player. Like I was having a conversation the other day. Like I can't remember the last time the Pistons drafted a second round pick that produced that well in the summer league. Like I really can't think the last time the Pistons drafted someone in the second round and we're like, this kid might be like a steal. Like this kid might actually crack the rotation, possibly. Like he has some stuff he needs to work on, which I think all the stuff that he needs to work on, it's just in the weight room, getting stronger. But I think overall, what we saw in the summer league is we saw a guy that can shoot 40% from three. We saw the passing ability, and we saw a lot of good things from Bobby. I think with him, the only thing he really has to work on is just adding a little bit more weight to his frame, and I think he'll be good. I really do. So the next question we have is from Shift God. Shout out to Shift. He's in every live stream. He's usually like the first person to comment. So shout out to Shift. He said, who do you see taking the most progression this year on the Pistons team next season? Most progression. I would say, I'm going to say Jaylen Duren. I think Jaylen Duren is going to have a year where he's going to have more progression because I think he's going to benefit from the spacing just as much as Cade Cunningham is. I think Jaylen Duren, we all know that he could score around the basketball. We all know around the basket. I don't know why I said around the basketball. We all know that he can catch lobs. But I think the question we have is defensively, can he protect the rim? He was very open about it that, last year was kind of an effort thing on his part. I think he's going to be more locked in this season of trying to be that rim protection center that a lot of us were like, we don't really have a defensive center. I think Jaylen Duren takes a step in progression this year shift, and it would not surprise me if we see him start blocking or, even just attempting to protect the rim more because we know he has all the physical tools to do it. But that would be my pick for the most progression. I could also see Assar taking a big leap. I could also see Jaden Ivey taking a big leap because he's in a contract year to get an extension going into next summer. But for me, I think I'm going to go Jaylen Duren. This comes from Ryan. Shout out to Ryan. He's on. I feel like Ryan's been subscribed to my channel probably since I started. So shout out to Ryan. For defense, you need Assar. Assar won't blossom with 18 minutes off the bench. 100% agree. I think that was a comment about the starting lineup. I think Assar will blossom, though, this season for sure. Caleb asked, what do you think the impact of Fred Vincent's coaching will be on Assar's shooting form and percentage will be in his first season? Caleb, love this question. I know I talked about it with Laz. I asked him a question about could Fred possibly change his jump shot? And I think it's definitely a opportunity that he could. But I think his impact not only is going to affect Assar, Caleb, I think it's going to affect everyone on this roster. The Pistons have not had a premier shooting coach like Fred Vincent since Dave Hoopla was on the Detroit Pistons staff under Stan Van Gundy. I think Assar can definitely benefit probably the most because his jump shot right now is just completely, I don't want to say it's broken, but I think it needs the most work, in my opinion. In percentages, I know he didn't really shoot a whole lot, but I would say if he can get like around the 28, maybe 30% with Fred his first year coaching Assar, I think would be success in itself. Right before the blood clot stopped, Assar was shooting around 28% from three without Fred Vincent's coaching. I think Fred can definitely work with Assar on his jump shot. I think that's the main reason why he was hired in the first place is to work with guys like Ron Holland and Assar, Jaden Ivey, and Cade. But I think if Assar can get close to like 28, 30-ish percent from three would be a success within their first season. So I'm really interested to see like what happens there. And we have a new member. Shout out to Adam for becoming a new member to our YouTube membership. Shout out, Adam. So, next question we have is from Mr. Jones. And his question is Walker Kessler's availability interesting to you? Oh, it definitely is. Definitely is. The thing is, it's Danny Ainge. And Danny Ainge is such a shrewd businessman in terms of trying to negotiate deals, Mr. Jones. I think he asked for, a first or two firsts for Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler is probably one of the better, rim protecting centers out there in the league right now. And the situation is kind of weird with Will Hardy not playing him as much. And the reasoning for that is because he doesn't stretch the floor, which I find kind of weird because his minutes were really just all over the place. But if you're the Pistons, you definitely make a call. Seeing what the Jazz want for Walker Kessler. If Danny Ainge won't come down on his price, I guess you just move on. Pistons don't really have multiple firsts just to throw at a Walker Kessler right now because our picks are still tied up with the Isaiah Stewart trade and the Knicks owner picks. We can't really trade them until draft night, but he's definitely a guy that I think would help improve this roster, especially around the rim and protecting the paint. This comes from Devon. Shout out to Devon. Who would be a better fit, Desmond Bane or Michael Porter Jr.? Ooh, that's a good one. Desmond Bane or Michael Porter Jr.? I would probably say Bane, because at least with Desmond Bane, if his shot's not falling, he can impact the game in different ways. With Michael Porter Jr., I feel like the only thing he does is shoot. And I could be like just completely wrong, but anytime I watch a Nuggets game, he just shoots and shoots and shoots. And he makes a lot of shots, but I think Desmond Bane would probably be a better fit, in my opinion, Devon, on this team. Because if the shot's not falling, I know Desmond Bane can defend some people. I know he can pass. I know he can do some other stuff to help the team win. But definitely do like both of those players for sure. Mr. Jones, adding Denny and drafting Klingon, the way they are building is excellent. So much flexibility while still being fun to watch. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised the Wizards traded Denny Avdia to Portland, but Portland got Donovan Klingon. He looks good. Denny Avdia is going to help them out on the wing quite a bit. But it does sound like Portland's fully committing to a rebuild now, because you see the Jeremy Grant reports that came out this week that they're looking for 2 firsts for Jeremy Grant. There's a report earlier today that DeAndre Ayton is expected to be shot because now they do have Donovan Klingon as possibly a franchise center, because I think that's what they feel about him. But yeah, Portland, I think they're finally committing to the rebuild. Even Anthony Simons, I know someone asked, could the Pistons trade for Anthony Simons? I personally don't think so, but sounds like they are just trying to trade all of their, older veterans who kind of like not so much veteran like Anthony Simons to try to get some more draft capital and, start their rebuild. But honestly, I think that Portland is in pretty good position to be a better team than they were last year. The Portland Trailblazers are the Pistons of the West. That's funny, Nick. That is funny. They really are. The Pistons need to bring back the bad boy villain image. Oh, you're talking about the skulls. I wish they would have put the skulls on that alternate jersey this year. That would have been really cool. The bad boys jerseys that they had. They had a couple skulls on the shorts, but they didn't put them on the jerseys, which I don't know if it's like a licensing. Can I say licensing thing with the NBA, but overall, I thought the jerseys were pretty cool. I did really like kind of um, the new alternatives, but really interested to see like what the alternatives are going to be for this upcoming season. But you guys, we answered almost 30 questions or 17 after you guys asked. We've been on for about an hour. I really don't have anything else to talk about, but if you guys have any other questions, let me know. We're going to probably wrap this up in around 5 minutes or so, but if you don't, I can just wrap this up now. Appreciate you guys for even watching this, during the off season. I know it's really dry. There's not a whole lot to talk about right now. Hopefully, with these summer runs, we'll have a little bit more to talk about. I know the Rico Hines runs should be starting pretty soon in the next couple of weeks. Same with the Stanley Remy run. So we're going to get a bunch of these basketball runs coming into the coming weeks. And I'm sure we can overreact and talk about that in, future podcasts. But don't see too many more people asking questions. So appreciate all of you guys watching, hanging out with me for an hour or so. I'll see you guys next week on the podcast. I'm going to try to get a guest. We'll probably talk some, Detroit Pistons news of the week, some possible, just this stuff going on, and keep you guys updated. Keep a weekly podcast going for you guys. Peace, you guys.